Hey guys, Magic Info Source here. No, it's been a long time since I created a video, but figured might as well give it another shot. This time, we're doing a commander deck. This is the first commander deck I ever built. It. I did do a little bit of tweaking on it, but not too much. So my commander is Vorel of the whole clade. He costs one colors, green and blue, so we're running Simic colors this deck. And it's a 1/4, 1 power, and 4 toughness. Legendary human merfolk. Tap a green and a blue, tap Vorel. Double the number of each kind of counter on target artifact, creature, or land. So with this deck, what we're going to want to be doing is big stompy creatures with green, then kind of trying to make them unblockable a little bit with blue. Not too much, but you'll see. So here's the deck. We're going to start off with creatures. First creature running is God Eternal Ranus. He costs 3 colors, 2 green. Legendary creature, zombie god. With Death Touch, whenever or when God Eternal Ranus enters the battlefield, double the power of each creature you control until end of turn. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. And then when God Eternal Ranus dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it in its owner's library, third from the top. This guy's really good. I usually want to play him more towards the end of the game to make one big final swing and bring everyone's life total down to 0 or even negative. Next, we've got Swift Spinner, Flash Reach. It costs 3 colors, 1 green, and it's a 2/3. I have this in here mainly because of the reach. The flash is nice, but I don't really care about that much or care about that part as much. The reach is what we're really going after. One thing this deck does have a problem with is flyers, and that kind of just helps with those a little bit more. Next creature we've got is Tishana's Wayfinder. It's a 2 colorless, 1 green for a 2/2. When Tishana's Wayfinder enters the battlefield, it explores. So basically, when it enters the battlefield, reveal a top card of your library. Put that card into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and then put the card back into your graveyard. The Explorer trigger on this is why I have it, because when you pair it with Vorel, this will double the amount of counters that this gets. So if it's not a land, we put a +1/+1 counter on it, and we can double that each turn. So that can actually get really big if it's not dealt with. Next, we've got Genesis Hydro. I love this card a lot. When you cast Genesis Hydro, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put a non-land permanent card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest into your library. Genesis Hydra enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters. Costs X and then 2 green for a 0/0, but it does the counters, which is also another great combo with Vorel. If you dump all your mana into a Hydra, Vorel can double those the next turn. But this is kind of like Villainous Wealth for yourself, and it's really great. It makes it so that way you can cost or cast things that can end the game. Then we got Aquastrand Spider as the next one. One colorless, 1 green for a spider mutant with graft 2, which means that whenever another creature enters the battlefield, I can kind of transfer the +1/+1 counters from this onto that. But what is really great about this is target creature with a +1/+1 counter on it gains reach until end of turn. That is phenomenal against flyers, because most of the creatures in this deck we're going to try to put +1/+1 counters on, and then if we can make those all have reach, flyers are no problem. And then we got Hooded Hydra. This one has potential. I haven't really gotten it to play how I want because people don't kill it. So it's a Hydra that costs X and 2 green, just like the Genesis Hydra for a Snake Hydra. Enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. When Hooded Hydra dies, put a +1/+1 green snake creature token onto the battlefield for each +1/+1 counter on it. With more for 5, and then when it's turned to face up, put 5 +1/+1 counters on it. I don't even mess with that. I just dump all my mana into it. But I have gotten this to almost 200 counters in one game before. So, but unfortunately they exiled it, so I never got to get 200 snakes. So we got Leaf Gilder, just for mana ramp. Costs 1 colorless, 1 green for a 2/1 Elf Druid. Tap it, add green to your mana pool. Not really much to say about it. It's just in there for mana ramp. Next, we've got Azusa, Lost But Seeking. She's a 3 mana, 1/2 legendary creature human monk. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. This is just great. If you can get some card draw, there are some card draw mechanics in here. You can be playing 3 lands each turn, which will just overwhelm your opponents with mana advantage. Then we've got a Reverent Hunter. When Reverent Hunter enters the battlefield, put +1/+1 counter. Put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to your devotion to green. I like to play this after I play down a couple Hydras, a couple other green creatures, and just get this boy as big as possible, then double him with Vorel. Next we have Vengevine. This one's really cool, actually. It's great against board wipes. It's the only graveyard thing I have in this deck. So it's a 4/3 for 4. Haste. When you cast a spell, if it's the second creature spell you cast this turn, you may return Vengevine from your graveyard to the battlefield. We have plenty of creatures in this deck. Vengevine does come out quite often, and he's just great, great chump blocker, great attacker, all around great card. Then we have Golden Hind, same deal as the Leaf Guilder. I'm not even going to go through it. Mana ramp. Yeva, Nature's Herald. This one is actually really good, especially when you're playing with the Hydras. You can just drop them in at the end step of somebody else's turn, or at the end step of the player right before you. And then you have essentially a giant hasty Hydra. So she's great. Oh, I didn't read what she does. So she is a 4 for 4 legendary creature elf shaman with flash. You may cast green creature cards as though they had flash. So she is great in this deck. Next we have Nessian Wild's Ravager. I kind of want to get rid of this, but I'm using him kind of to get rid of other creatures if nobody else wants to deal with him. So he is a 6/6 for 6 Hydra with Tribute 6. As this creature enters the battlefield, an opponent of your choice may place 6 +1/+1 counters on it. When Nessian Wild's Ravager enters the battlefield, if tribute wasn't paid, you may have it fight another target creature. So that's great because not a lot of people are playing 6/6s. They don't want to pay the tribute, so they're going to lose something. So we've got Feral Hydra. It's a Hydra beast, X and 1 green, and comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it. But you can also tap 3, put a +1/+1 counter on Feral Hydra. Any player may play this ability. This is great if somebody's getting really big, or somebody's becoming a really big threat in a game, and the other 2 players want to get rid of them. This is great because they can all kind of dump their mana in, get this guy beefy, and then double that with Vorel and swing in for a big hit. So we've got Mistcutter Hydra here. Now this one, first glance, is really great. And it actually is. It's really great. Hydra, X 1 green, comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on it. It can't be countered. It's haste and protection from blue. But the only thing that is killing this card is that protection from blue, because Vorel's ability requires blue mana. So you can't double his counters with Vorel. But it is great just as an early game play with hasty. Protection from blue, can't be countered. It's pretty good. Next we have a Hero's Bane. I kind of want to get rid of it too, but it kind of does Vorel's job for him, but it costs more. So 5 for a 0/0, but it enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters on it, and for 4 mana, 2 colorless and 2 green, you can put X +1/+1 counters on it, and where X is its power. So it can really actually be good if you're using or if you've already tapped Vorel out to double something else. You can also double that. But I'm sure there's other better cards I can use. Next, we've got Vastwood Hydra. Enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. When it dies, you may distribute a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on Vastwood Hydra among any number of creatures you control. So you can get this guy really big and have him die somehow. And then you can move all of his counters or some of his counters or do whatever you want with his counters and just put them on something else, which can make that other thing really big as well. Next, for our last green creature, we have Hydra Omnivore. It's a 6-mana 8/8. When it deals damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each other player. So really great in a multiplayer commander game. If there's somebody behind, you can hit them and everyone else gets hit at the same time. It's fantastic. For our first blue creature, we have True Name Nemesis. This is also great in a multiplayer game if somebody is running blue or somebody's just into disrupting all of your stuff and you want to get rid of them. You can name that player, and True Name Nemesis has protection from him. Well, from everything about them except for board wipes. Okay, next we have Quickling. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with flash flying. The only problem with it is when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you return another creature you control to its hand, to your hand. So I mean, it is good in a certain situation if they're attacking you and you block, but you flash this out before damage is dealt, then it can work. It can save your stuff. Next we have Exultant Cultist. When it dies, draw a card. 3-mana 2/2. Pretty good. Next we have Fleet Swallower. When it attacks, target player puts the top half of his or her library rounded up into his or her graveyard. This is a big old target on your back whenever you play it. It can be really good if everyone else is behind or right after a board wipe, but it is a giant target on your back because nobody wants to lose half their library. Okay, next we have Mizium Meddler. This is kind of a counterspell in a way. 3-mana 1/4 with flash. When Mizium Meddler enters the battlefield, you may change the target of target spell or ability to Mizium Meddler. So it can work really well if somebody is trying to counter your creature or destroy your creature. You can just change it to Mizium Meddler and all is good. Next, we have Thassa, God of the Sea. I don't even want her as a creature. I'm just using her as the scry ability and the target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. It's phenomenal. I never really get her to be a creature, but I'm okay with it. I more want her as a legendary enchantment than I want her as a creature. Next, we have Herald of Secret Streams. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. It's just a no-brainer. It basically turns our whole deck unblockable if we need it to be. Next, we have Siren Lookout. Flying when it enters the battlefield, it explores, kind of like how that Tishana's Wayfinder works, except this one has flying. Next, we have Mnemonic Wall. It's a 5-mana 0/4 defender. When it enters the battlefield, it may return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. I'm using that just for the returning stuff. I don't really care if it dies after I play it. It's just it gets stuff back to me. Next, we have River Sneak. Can't be blocked when it enters or whenever another merfolk enters the battlefield under your control. River Sneak gets +1/+1 counters down the turn. I don't run that many merfolk, but this is just great because of that unblockable. And if I can find another way to get it +1/+1 counters, which I have other ways, I can double them and have a giant unblockable creature. Okay, so that's it for the blue creatures. Now we have the blue-green creatures. Right here we have Lore Scale Coital. Whenever you draw a card, you may put a +1/+1 counter on it. Really good. Especially if you have a card draw engine built in. Speaking of a card draw engine, Fathom Mage. It is phenomenal in this deck. anytime I play it, people have to remove it almost immediately because of vorel. If I can get even get 1+1+1 counter on it, I can draw almost my entire deck, just doubling it each time. So it has evolve whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control. If that creature has greater power or toughness than it, put a +1/+1 counter. Super good card. It's just absolutely a solid. It's not coming out of that deck. Next, we have Shapers of Nature. This one's good for another card draw mechanic. I can always remove +1/+1 counters easily. It's not that hard. So it's a 3 mana, 3/3, tap 4, and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Tap 3, remove a +1/+1 counter, draw a card. It is great. For our last 2-colored creatures, we have Horizon Chimera. Flash, flying, trample. Whenever you draw a card, you gain a life. That paired with that Fathom Mage right there is, or not that one, right there, is just phenomenal. These two, when they're both out, I draw my whole deck almost, or I gain a billion life. And then, but you got to be careful with that too. But I guess you can actually stop it. So I was going to say you have to be careful not to draw your whole deck and then not win that turn. So, I mean, vorel only has so many activations with this before you do just draw your entire deck. So you got to be keeping an eye on it. Next, we have Colossus of Akros. I'm not certain I will keep this in the deck. I have it for the monstrosity because if I can make it monstrous and then it loses defender, then I essentially have a 20/20 indestructible creature and has trample, and then I can double that same turn with a vorel. Have a 40/40 trampler. It can't get much better. Next, we have Burnished Heart. You all know what Burnished Heart does. It's just for mana fixing. We have one Planeswalker in the deck, and it is Nissa, who shapes the world, or who shakes the world. Whenever you tap a force for mana, add an additional green mana. That is phenomenal. That is just great. You can put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to one target non-creature land you control. Untap it. It becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with vigilance and haste until end of turn. That's still a land. I use this ability after I've tapped everything out, so that way I can untap another land, and then I have 2 more mana available. And then her -8 is you get an emblem with lands you control have indestructible. Search your library for any number of forced cards, put them onto the battlefield, tapped, and then shuffle your library. That can just be absolutely bonkers. Wrath of God ain't got nothing on it. Then we have Cyclonic Rift. If you're running blue and or if your commander deck is running blue, you have a Cyclonic Rift. No two ways about it. Oh yeah, that'll start our instance, by the way. Next, we have Cancel, counter target spell. That's its purpose. That's what it does. Then we have Refocus, untap target creature, draw land. Perfect. We have Perilous Voyage, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. If its converted mana cost was 2 or less, scry 2. That's always good when somebody has a big creature and you're hoping that your opponents can deal with it when it enters again. We have Opt, scry 1, draw 1. It's phenomenal. Then we have Cryptic Command, choose to counter target spell or return target permanent to its owner's hand, or tap all creatures your opponents control, or draw a card. I usually choose counter target spell and draw a card, but it all just depends on the situation. Next, we have Dissipate, counter target spell. If that spell was countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. It's great. Next, we have Statute of Denial, counter target spell. If you control a blue creature, draw a card, then discard a card. This is pretty good too. It's not the best though. Next, we have Substantiate, return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. So as you can tell, we're all about not letting our opponents play anything. We have Dissolve, counter target spell, scry 1. That one's really good too. Then we have Verdant Rebirth. Until end of turn, target creature gains whenever this creature dies, return it to its hand, draw a card. This one's really good, especially if they have a board wipe. River Herald's Boon, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target merfolk. We have enough merfolk in this deck where this actually does work most of the time. That's it for instance. Now we have sorceries. We have draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you attacked with a creature this turn. It's phenomenal. Then we have Curse of Swine. This is one of the only board wipes that we have in this deck. Exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller puts a 2/2 green board creature token onto the battlefield. That one's pretty good too, because most of the time, if you're exiling something or you're spending money to exile something, it's better than a 2/2 boar. So then we have Contingency Plan. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard, and the rest back on top in any order. That one's great as a turn 2 play, or even a turn 1 if you have a Soul Ring. It's just great because then you can kind of, what you're going to get for the next 5 turns. Explore, you may play an additional land this turn, draw a card. Fantastic. Then we have Triumph of the Hordes. Just one of the win cons. Until end of turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain Trample and Infect. It is phenomenal. Gotta love it. Next, we have Market Festival for mana ramp. Basically, when you tap the enchanted land, it adds 2 mana of any color to your mana pool. It's great. Then we have Verdant Haven. Kind of does the same thing, except this one gains you 2 life, and you only add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Next, we have New Horizons. Enchant land, enters the battlefield, +1/+1 counter on target creature. This one, it sounds like it would tap for 3, but it only taps for 2, unfortunately. But hey, at least you're getting +1/+1 counters on creatures. Next enchantment we have is Deep Root Waters. I will be getting rid of this, so comment below what you would replace this with. Whenever you cast a merfolk spell, create a +1/+1 blue merfolk creature when with hexproof. It's a token, by the way. Next, we have Invisibility. Can't be blocked except by walls. It's phenomenal. Then we have One with the Wind. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has flying. Deals with their flying problem as well. Enchanted creature can't be blocked, and whenever it attacks, scry 1. You gotta love that. There's nothing wrong with that card at all. If they have something really big and scary, I will mind control it, which you control enchanted creature. I actually had a game where there were 3 mind controls on 1 creature because we all wanted it. So we have Simic Ascendancy. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature, put that many counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if it has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. Never won a game with this because right as soon as it gets out, everyone reads it and destroys it. And it sucks. But I'm hoping one day I'll get a win. First artifact is Soul Ring. Nothing to explain there. Then we have Dragon Throne of Tarkir. This one you might not know about. Equipped a creature has Defender and tap 2 and tap it. Other creatures you control gain Trample and gain +X until end of turn. Where X is this creature's power. Put this on the biggest one you have on board. Tap it and then have everyone else swing out. Perfect. Okay. Then we have our lands. We have islands here. We have We have 16 islands here. And then we have this many forests. Let's see how many that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We also have 16 forests. So 16 out of the 16 forests, not bad. And then we have other mana. We have Desert of the Indomitable, or the Indomitable. I have it just mainly for the cycling. We have Simic Growth Chamber. It's a great land. We have Evolving Wilds, just to make sure that we have the right kind of mana when we need it. And then we also have Unclaimed Territory. And then that's this deck. Will you guys feel free to comment what about it you'd change? What about it you liked? And feel free, leave your opinions down below. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification. I don't upload a ton, so you won't be getting super annoying notifications that I uploaded. But thanks for watching. I know it was a long one, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.